Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. Simone here. Today I'm going to be filming my April wrap up, and I read 6 books in the month of April, which for me is not very much. However, every book that I read this month I gave a 5-star to, which has been pretty amazing. So although the quantity of books has not been massive for me, the quality has been amazing, and I've never had a month before where every book I gave a 5-star to. So let's get started with the 6 books that I read. So the first book was actually in my recent April favourites, which I will link down below, but it went up last week, and I read Wonder by RJ Palacio with the wonderful Kaz from Cats and Camera, who's also a channel I'll link down below. I loved the experience of reading this book with Kaz, and I also loved this book. Obviously, like I said, 5 stars all around. This book basically follows how old is he? This follows a 10-year-old boy named August Pullman who has a severe facial deformity and has had so from birth, and it's about him joining a school for the first time because previously he's been homeschooled, and it's about the kind of ups and downs of school and his peers and how he's treated and his family relationships, and it's just, there isn't like a big, you know, action-packed plot line to this, but it is probably quite character-based, I think. But this book just absolutely drew me in and spat me out the other side. I actually finished the last 100 pages of this while I was on the train to go and see my boyfriend, and it was probably not the book to read on the train because I got a little bit emotional and people were looking at me funny like, what is this girl doing? But this is such a beautiful story, and I don't know, I need to see the film now because I loved this so much. The voices in this were just wonderful, and what I didn't realise going into this was that it's actually from multiple perspectives. So you have different characters sort of having different sections to the book, and I originally wasn't really sure how I felt about that, but actually I think it really worked well. It talks from August's point of view, it talks from his sister's point of view, and just different people. There was one character in this who I think from reading other people's perspectives you could get quite a negative light of her, and then reading her side it kind of all made sense and made you realise exactly what her motivations were, and I really liked that. I also think that originally when I was talking to Kaz about it, I was saying that the sister's boyfriend, reading from his perspective, I was really annoyed to start with because in his section there's like no capital letters, the grammar's pretty bad, but actually the things that he said were really heartwarming, and it was lovely. There were some wonderful quotes in this book, like some quotes that will probably stick with me, and yeah, I just loved this. I loved the sense of camaraderie that was between the characters, and yeah, I would definitely reread this again in the future, and it might even be one that I keep the book of because it's good to have it on the shelf. But yeah, I'm really looking forward to watching the film of this because I think that will probably be really good, and I'm pretty sure it's got Julia Roberts in, who's one of my favourites, so I feel like that can only be good. So yeah, I'm really looking forward to that, but I loved this book and would definitely recommend. Although this I thought was quite an overhyped book, I completely see where the hype came from. The next book I read was on my Kindle, so I'm not going to hold this up while I talk about it because I'm sure I'll put an image on the screen. That is the book 3 Dark Crowns by Kendar Blake. This was one of my books to read in 2019, I'm pretty sure, but it's one of those books that's been on my shelf for ages. Well, it's been on my Kindle for ages and I just hadn't got round to it, and I think I needed the kick to read it because I loved it. This basically follows 3 sisters who each have a perspective in this book, and basically the 3 of them are triplets, and they were born to the Queen. So one of them will become the Queen in the future, but in order for that girl to become the Queen she has to kill her 2 sisters, and so from quite a young age they were separated and they were brought up in 3 different areas of the sort of island, I guess, and each one of them has a slightly different like ability, but they haven't yet come into their abilities, and it's about that, and it's honestly wonderful. I loved all the characters in this. I do think the one like amazing thing about this is that all the side characters have a purpose, like they mean something. There's not like any side characters that I felt like were just there for the kind of to be there. They all kind of did something and they all worked. There was a lot of characters, but I think that they were all kind of necessary, because you have to think that it's like 3 whole books essentially could be written, one on each of the people, which I know that this is not a standalone. I think there's more, and I would love to read more. I absolutely loved this. I thought the writing style was really interesting. I loved the way that it was intertwined and the different storylines and perspectives came in. Thought that was great. There wasn't any kind of like cheesy romances. I thought that was really great. Yeah, I absolutely loved this. I thought it was really well done. Definitely one that I want to continue the series of. And yeah, definitely, obviously, as I said before, a 5-star. The next book that I read was another buddy read. I buddy read this with Sarah from Your True Shelf, Charlie from Charlie Brooke and Kieran from Key Reads, and had an amazing time reading this book with them. And that was The Night Watch by Sarah Waters. I had never read a Sarah Waters book before. This was the first one, and it's quite a big book. Like, the book itself is quite big and there's quite a lot of pages, and I'll be honest, when we said we were going to read this, I was really glad that I was buddy reading this with people, because I do kind of feel like sometimes the big books, it's easier to read a little bit a day and kind of like talk to people about it, because I think sometimes otherwise you kind of get put off a bit. But this was one of those books that just I absolutely sailed through. I started this a little bit late for the buddy read, but I did catch up quite quickly because it was just so wonderful. It's basically told in a really interesting timeline perspective. So it starts in 1947, so there's a section of 1947, then it goes to 1944, and then it goes to 1941. And so yeah, it goes backwards, the timeline. So whatever you learn at the beginning, you're never going to go any further forward than that, because it goes backwards. And initially I was a bit like, I kind of want to know what will happen to them, and obviously you're not going to find that out. So it was really interesting, and I thought that was really, really fun kind of play on the perspectives, and yeah, it was really, really good. I absolutely adored all of the characters pretty much. There was a few that was like, they're not so likeable, but they weren't supposed to be. And yeah, I just thought the characters were the bit that made it, really. There's kind of 4 main characters, but there's lots of other people involved in them, and they've all got some kind of link to it. It basically takes place around, obviously, the Second World War. Now, this is a book that I can't really say too much else about, because there is lots of kind of intertwining elements, and there's nothing that I could really say that would be non-spoilered. But as I said, this was amazing. This does have a lot of LGBT characters in. There's quite a lot of different elements with that, and I loved that. I thought that was really interesting, and there was quite a bit of sexy time in this too. I did the Spring Has Sprung book tag, which I'll link down below, and this was my answer for that, spoiler, because the question was mating season. This one has a lot of sex scenes in, and actually that was kind of just like funny to read. Not funny, but like, it wasn't done in a crude way, or like in a way that would make you a little bit uncomfortable. Like, it was done really, really well. So yeah, I absolutely loved this book. I thought it was really intelligent and really well done and really well placed, and I'm really glad I did the buddy read with the guys, because that was wonderful. So yes, hopefully I'll read more Sarah Waters in the future, because this was another 5-star from me. Next up, I read the book that you all picked for me for the month of April. I did my poll in my April TBR video, which I'll link below, where I chose 3 books, and the one that you all picked for me was Caraval by Stephanie Garber. This is a book that often gets compared to The Night Circus, and I think it's just because there's a circus tent on the front. I think other than that, I don't see the comparison, if I'm honest. I personally kind of preferred this one to The Night Circus, only because I gave The Night Circus a 4-star, because there was some elements to it where I felt it dragged on a little bit. I didn't think this one dragged on. For me, this was done really well. It's quite succinct. I just really enjoyed the writing style. This one is definitely not as atmospheric as The Night Circus by any chance. Like, that one is very sort of mysterious and dark, and although this does have elements of that, I don't think the atmosphere is quite the same. This basically follows a game called Caraval, which happens every year, and it's put on by the Master Legend, and you're only allowed to go if you're invited. And one year Scarlett and her sister Tella, or Donatella, basically get invited to this game, and they go along, and Tella is kidnapped as part of the game, and Scarlett has to find her in order to win the game. And at the end of the game, if you win, you get a single wish, and yes, it's about that. Like I said, this was a book that completely surprised me. It did not have in it what I thought it was going to. I was very much invested in it. I wanted to find out more. This is also a debut novel by Stephanie Garber, which I think is amazing because this was absolutely amazing and blew me away. I loved the kind of way that it made you really see what the characters were seeing. I think the way that it was described was really vivid and really kind of imaginative, and I loved that. And no matter what I thought was going to happen, something completely else happened and sort of threw me for a loop. So yeah, this one was fantastic. I do think if you're going to go into this thinking that it's like The Night Circus, you're not going to enjoy it, or you're going to be disappointed, because it's not that at all for me. I don't see the comparison myself, but yes, I enjoyed it a little bit more than The Night Circus, but actually I enjoyed both stories. So yeah, I would recommend them both, but like I said, don't go into either one comparing it to the other, because you're not going to find the answer. Next up, guys, you will never believe it, I read City of Heavenly Fire by Cassandra Clare, the 6th and final book in the Mortal Instruments series. I finally finished the series. I could not be happier. This, as you might know if you've watched other videos of mine, the 6th one has been the one I've been waiting to read for like 6 months to a year. I keep saying I'm going to read it and I haven't, and now I have, which is very exciting. And like I said, I gave it 5 stars. I think the last couple of books have definitely been my favourites. I've loved book 5 and 6 the most out of all of them. It is quite a chunky book. This one is quite a big book. It's about 650 pages, but for me this was a wonderful ending to a series. I personally decided not to read the books from the Infernal Devices in with this series. I know there's meant to be spoilers, but I don't really mind. Like, I'd rather read the whole series and then start the Infernal Devices series, to be honest. So yeah, that happened to me. So I think that the characters in it, I think I've met like some of the characters that are in the Infernal Devices at the end of this, but obviously I'm not going to go into any detail because I don't want to spoil anyone else, even though potentially I'd spoil myself, but I don't really mind. This was really well paced. I loved the action in this. I loved the kind of the conclusion to the love stories and the kind of just the end to it, I guess. Like, I thought it was really well done. I absolutely love this. Honestly, this is one of my favourites. And like I said, it was definitely a 5-star read for me because, oh, I don't know, there was something in this that just made me want to like hug it and keep reading. But I was like, I finally read it and I couldn't be happier. So yeah, I'm definitely going to keep going with Cassandra Clare's works. Personally, I find them really interesting and I love them. I know some people have issues with it, but you know what? I enjoy reading them, so I'm going to keep doing that. Yeah, loved this book. 5 out of 5 stars. And the final book I read in the month of April was another one on my Kindle, and that was Forbidden by Tabitha Suzuma. When I heard about this book, the way that it's always described to me as this is a book about incest, and it is, but it is so much more than that. This book made me cry so much. I think that I should preface this by saying this is not a book that's meant to make you think that incest is okay, or that incest is something that should just be like swept over. It's not. This is a book about 2 people in a very desperate and very difficult situation who find solace in each other, and they happen to be brother and sister. Basically, this follows Maya and Loken, who are brother and sister. They have 3 younger siblings. They have 2 brothers and a sister, and their mother is fairly absent. Their father left, walked out on the family years before, and their mother is an alcoholic who essentially comes to the house maybe once or twice every couple of weeks, and she doesn't really stay, she doesn't really do anything to help them. So basically Maya and Loken essentially look after the 3 younger children as if they are the parents. So they are in a difficult situation because they are 17 and 18 respectively, and they essentially are trying to do school, they are trying to run a household, they're trying to get money from somewhere, and they fall onto each other essentially as their only support system. They don't have anyone else. They're trying to stop their younger siblings from being taken into care because obviously they don't want the family to be separated, and it's about that. It's not about the fact that they end up like loving each other. It's about the process, I guess, and I think that saying it's a book about incest is kind of an unfair sort of synopsis, I guess, because that's not what it's really about, if that makes any sense. Like, I don't know how to explain it really, but all I will say is it's a really wonderful story, and although it's wrong, it's also something that you end up rooting for. So it's kind of that difficult like balance, I guess. I absolutely loved it. Like I said, I gave it a 5-star. It made me cry, and yeah, I couldn't put it down basically. I was reading it for like 2 days I think, and then I finished it because it was so good. So yeah, definitely would recommend. I don't know if Tabitha Zazuma has any other books. If she does, I would definitely check them out because, you know, she's a really, really good writer and I love that. But yeah, I would definitely recommend that you give this one a go. But like I said, just sort of bear in mind that it's not necessarily what you've read it's going to be. So there you are guys, that is the 6 books that I read in the month of April. Like I said, it was a very positive, quality reading month for me. I really enjoyed reading these books. Let me know in the comments down below what your favourite book of the month has been. I would love to know. And did you give any 5 stars? Because it's always fun to find out. And give this video a thumbs up if you enjoyed it, and subscribe to my channel if you haven't already, and come back next time for another video. Bye guys!